Welcome to Wind and Thunder Radio, everybody. This is Thunderhands. I'm going to try a little bit different format today. I'm just going to leave that graphic up there, and we're going to treat this as a radio show. No video, no pictures, unless I happen to want to flash a picture up there. But I was thinking about, I'm going to try different formats here. I'm going to try, you all know what I look like. You've seen past videos, and if you haven't, well, you can go back and see them, the live ones. And I might trade off here, do some just radio shows where it's just voice. And I think sometimes it's better to just listen to the voice, because I think you can get distracted by the visual sometimes. And I've been having a few problems with the visual, so we're going to do a radio show today. And what I want to talk about is the personage of Crowfoot, and what a great warrior and peacemaker that he was. Now, a lot of people think, well, there's a conflict there between war and peace, and this has been going on for I can't say how many decades, centuries, whatever. But it's possible to be a warrior, because there's all kinds of warriors, and a peacemaker, and they kind of cross over. It's kind of interesting. It's kind of like, I'll do a metaphor here. It's almost like, like the great lawmen were at one time on both sides of the law. Well, how are you going to know one side without the other, in a way? If you know one side, then you can deal with the other. If you can, you know what I'm saying here? But I like Crowfoot because he had a saying that I have used many times, and I've thought about Crowfoot, but I really haven't. I've just researched so many people that he's kind of like one that fell through the cracks in a way. I knew some things about him. What a great person. And his famous quote was, which will live forever: "What is life? It is the flash of a firefly in the night. It is the breath of a buffalo in the wintertime. It is the little shadow which runs across the grass and loses itself in the sunset." Crowfoot's last words in 1890. His last words. Pretty profound. Now, Crowfoot was born into the blood tribe of the Blackfoot Confederacy, which at the time included the Blackfoot and the Piegan tribes. And he was born in a place called Belly River in what is now southern Alberta. And he was the son of Istuwunepata, which means packs a knife. That was the father. And Axyapsepi, attacked toward home. What a name, or names for parents. Packs a knife and attacks, or attack toward home. Pretty interesting. And names are interesting because in the tribes you might have several different names throughout your career or your life, or your young manhood, and then your middle age, and then, you know what I'm saying? And everybody, I mean, even Crazy Horse and Sitting Bull had different names, okay, at different times. And they even had secret names that they never told anybody. But getting back to Crowfoot here, as an infant, he was given the name Ashtokomi, or shot close. Well, what other name would you have coming from packs a knife and attack toward home? But when he was 5, his father was killed by Crow Indians. And within a year, his mother remarried to a man named Ake Nakesimi, which means many names. Getting back to the many names thing. And he was a member of the Blackfoot tribe. And so Crowfoot was taken to the Blackfoot tribe. And he was given the name Ki Ista, which means bear ghost. But later he received his father's name of, again, Istoun Epata, meaning packs a knife. I kind of like that name. For personal reasons. I mean, I'm kind of a knife collector, so I kind of like that name. You can do a lot of different kinds of work with a knife, shall we say. And it comes in handy in a lot of situations, even surgery and whatever. But before he was 20 years old, Crowfoot had been in 19 battles, and been wounded 6 times. And his most serious wound occurred during a winter raid upon the Shoshone Indians. And he was shot in the back at one time. Now, I don't know if it was on that raid, but the lead ball was never removed, which was common in those days because sometimes a knife just couldn't get it. You just couldn't get, it was too dangerous to operate or get a ball or a bullet out if it was lodged in a place where it could kill you if you tried to remove it. So he just left it in there, just like a lot of people that got wounded back then did. Now, on the peaceful side, in 1866, Crowfoot prevented a number of his own Blackfoot warriors from looting a train of the Hudson Bay Company carts or wagons and killing its Métis. Now, I find that interesting because I'm Métis, which is a combination of French and Indian. Excuse me. But he prevented them from getting killed. And then, defying a number of the warrior chiefs, he provided a safe escort for them back to Fort Edmonton. So he was trying to prevent a needless death. Now, let's jump to a little bit different part of his life. In December of 74, Crowfoot first met an assistant commissioner of the Northwest Mounted Police. And these were like the Royal Mounted Police, the Canadian police. They were pretty healthy, they were a pretty next to the earth breed. And the guy's name that he met was James Farquharson McLeod, which to me means probably Swedish-Scottish mixture. I don't know. Interesting name, but he was a commissioner of the Northwest Mounted Police, and him and Crowfoot became good friends. And they worked together. And this McLeod insisted that the Blackfoot rights be respected. And Crowfoot encouraged his people to maintain friendly relations with the police, so they worked together. Now, let me mention that the police in Canada, way up north there, were not like the Bluecoats. They had a different mentality than the Bluecoats down here in the States, because the States were kind of a conglomeration. A lot of Irish police, a lot of Irish Bluecoats or soldiers. So, and up there it was not so much that way. It was more English, and so they had a different kind of outlook or a different kind of mentality. They were more friendly, they were more open at one time to the native or the traditional indigenous people of their land. They had a certain respect for them that was not something that you saw in America. So getting back to the point here about these two being friends, Crowfoot and let's call him by his first name, James, who was the commissioner. And in 1876 now, when the wars, this is 2 years later, when the wars were raging in the United States between the Plains Indians, which were the Sioux basically, and the American cavalry, which was Custer, a Sioux messenger came to Crowfoot's camp up in Canada and asked the Blackfeet to join the fight. In other words, let's take them all out in both countries here, because they had just had the battle of the Little Bighorn, or the Greasy Grass, Crazy Horse and Sitting Bull, with Custer, and they finished them off. And they had high hopes, okay, of ridding the land of these parasite Bluecoats. And so when they defeated him, when they had that first, and that was their first real defeat, well, not their first, but their big one and their last, they sent a messenger to the Blackfeet to exterminate the Northwest Mounted Police up there, because they were feeling pretty proud. Crowfoot, who lived up there, said nope. He not only rejected the offer, but he said he'd join the police to fight the Sioux if they ever came north, because he had a good relationship and he was a visionary. So when word of this got to Ottawa and eventually to England, where the Queen was, she praised him for his loyalty. Now, if you look ahead a little bit, I mean, it was the right decision, because a short time later, the Sioux started going downhill and they started getting overrun, because the Bluecoats couldn't have the fact that Custer was killed, and so they just were out to exterminate everybody, Crazy Horse, Sitting Bull. And that's when Sitting Bull fled to Canada, and he called Canada the home of the, I don't know, I forget, I think it was the Great Mother or the Great White Mother or the Great Queen Mother, one of those things. And he loved it up there, because when he went up there, Sitting Bull, he met Crowfoot, but when he first went up there, the Royal Canadian Mounted Police, or the Royal Police, they were right on him, but they were there when he first saw him. He got scared, but when they came up, they said, hey, you're welcome here as long as you keep off of other tribes' grazing land, and you don't hunt in their territory, and as long as you keep peace, we have no problem with you whatsoever. We are open to relationships with the natives of both countries of North America well, Canada and what would become the United States. So Sitting Bull did meet Crowfoot, and I'm sure he was glad at that time that Crowfoot had made the decision that he did to not start fighting with the Royal Canadian Mounted Police or the Royal Police, because it was to Sitting Bull's benefit at that time, which he couldn't have foreseen, although he did foresee a lot of things. So Sitting Bull was impressed, really impressed with the whole situation up there, and Crowfoot as a chief, as a Blackfoot chief. And so they became friends. They became close friends, and Sitting Bull even named his son Crowfoot, just like after Crowfoot. So that's kind of like a pretty good rundown of Crowfoot. I mean, there's a lot more stuff about him and a lot of things that he did that create peace, but I think the point that I'm trying to make here, well, let me finish up on his life first and then I'll make that point. But Crowfoot was a notable Canadian figure, but he was unhappy during the last decade of his life because he was increasingly disillusioned about the treatment of his people, because, you know, just like anything, you know, different factions come and go, different government people come and go, different regimes come in, different, just like in the United States now. They started getting a little bit more corrupt and a little bit more hardcore. Kind of took a toll on him when he saw that. His health started deteriorating. And then, you know, his personal life was struck by a series of tragedies. So he lived the last 3 years of his life pretty quietly, visiting old friends on neighboring reserves, and he assisted Red Crow, head chief of the Bloods, and preventing his warriors from raiding the Gros Ventre Indians. And in the following year he traveled to Montana, where he tried unsuccessfully to arrange a peace treaty with the Assiniboines, and all this with failing eyesight. But he remained on his reserve during the winter of 1889 and 90 and died during the spring. So his chiefmanship was assumed by his foster brother, Three Bulls. But neither he nor succeeding chiefs achieved the prestige or the greatness of Crowfoot. So Crowfoot was a great warrior, but he was also a peacemaker, and he was a visionary. And I often think about those two things, or those three things: peacemaker, visionary, warrior. So he really, when he was a peacemaker, he was showing his spiritual warriorship. And I think the reason that anybody wants peace when they've been a warrior is because they see how bad it is. They see the real side of war. Just like our vets come home here messed up sometimes, a lot of times, they see the real side of war. They know what killing somebody else does to you as a person. And so they want to do everything they can as a spiritual warrior to stop that bloodshed. It's almost like that saying, you know, you can't be a saint until you've been a sinner. So you can't be a peacemaker until you know what it's like to be in war. I think that's interesting. And basically it applies to our time today, because that honor, the honor involved with those kind of wars or skirmishes, and then the realization that followed, and then the whole concept has changed radically, because now it's gotten impersonal. People are not persons, they're not tribes, they're not members of tribes. They even had reverence for their enemies when they fought. You know that, right? I've mentioned that before. But there is no reverence in what is done today. There is no reverence whatsoever. There's just outright slaughter of the innocents and killing. And the leaders today are not true peacemakers. They don't lay their reputation and lives on the line to make peace. It's just quite the opposite, isn't it? It's quite the opposite, and it's quite disturbing. And it's something that we have to live with, because the tribes had to live with being dominated and domineered and cut down and put on reservations and brainwashed by religious fanatics and having their own religion and belief systems taken away, and so forth and so on. So I thought this was just a good story to give us pause to think about, warriorship and spirituality, or peace, being a peacemaker and a visionary. So I'm going to end the show there today, but just wanted to say that this is Wind and Thunder Radio, and this is Thunderhands. And we talk about, just like it says there on the logo, truth, spirit, spiritual matters, planetary events, and just events that affect the planet and affect the world. But I'm going to try to incorporate just a little bit more storylines about people like Crowfoot. We're going to go back here, people, and we're going to revisit good times. Even though some of the times weren't so good, let's say we're going to revisit sacred times, tribal times, and maybe we'll do some comparison. Now, Wind and Thunder Radio is a component of Campfire Council, and that will be in the show notes below this video, or this radio show video, /video/radio show. All links will be there, and we could use your donations to keep this going, and any kind of sponsorship, so that I can say Wind and Thunder Radio brought to you by out of sight camping equipment or whatever. So please think about that. And then also, there's just a lot of technical things involved with getting these shows out, and there's equipment, studio equipment in the form of computers that need to be upgraded and replaced, and there are expenses. So, like right now, we're in need of maybe upgrading to a newer laptop or whatever. So any donations in that regard would be appreciated at the website campfire-council.com, which will I'll try to put a pop-up that should pop up right about now on the screen here. So I'm going to end it there. This is Thunder. Always thinking of my brothers and sisters and humanity in general, and hoping that whatever I do or whatever I say on here are things that will reach your heart and that you will consider, even if you don't agree with everything I say. It's always good to consider other people's viewpoints. And I might also mention that I have plans to do interviews with people that I respect, that I can get some kind of conversation going with on a consciousness raising level. I thought it might be nice to interview somebody of the female variety too, to get that yin energy, that side. So I might look around for somebody that could be a foil or a sounding board or a contributor in that sense too. But right now I'm going to say, from the one eye of the heart, this is Thunderhands, and until next time, peace be unto you. May you, walk the red road.